Hey, this is Steve Gamlin, the Motivational Firewood Guy, and you are listening to Awaken Nation with Brad Solis.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Solis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Steve, how's it going, buddy?
Good, man. How you doing, Brad?
Good. I finally got you on the show. I am excited. Our listening audience is excited as well because your story is freaking interesting, man. I got to tell you.
It's been fun to live it, and I'm very happy I put pen to paper. I've been journaling now for 28 years, so I'm glad I recorded it all. And I've never had a problem with drugs and alcohol, but I tell you what, some days my memory is like drawing on an Etch-a-Sketch in the backseat of a car doing 80 over rumble strips. So I'm glad I wrote it and secured all these stories and some of the stuff we'll be talking about today. So thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to read your bio real quick and you and I have a lot in common. So this is just going to be like two buddies hanging out. Yeah. I'm not going to read this like Don LaFontaine, but it's now, although I could, now in his 16th year, that would really be like the movie promo. But Steve Gamlin is in his 16th year as the Motivational Firewood Guy. And he shares his back to basics blends of positivity and humor with corporate and conference audiences around the country. I got to hear about how you do this because this is a lot of fun. Getting corporate people up and about and, just enjoying stuff. But drawing from a decade in the radio industry, 7 years of stand-up comedy, and a 30-plus year personal development journey, Steve teaches his clients to see their desired outcomes, understand their why, then build action plans to achieve them, utilizing his Vision Board Mastery Program and live events. Please welcome to the show, everybody, Steve Gamlin.
Thank you, Brad. If you put macaroni and glitter around the edge of that, my mom would hang it on her fridge. You nailed it.
I think my mom would have done the same. My mom called me Hollywood. She would always yell Hollywood.
Well, my mom's been calling me Radio Man for 28, actually 30 years. This year is the anniversary of when I started in rock morning radio.
Wow, that's fantastic. I can hear the discipline in your voice. Because did you grow up in Boston? I'm not even going to do the accent, but yeah.
I'm an hour north of Boston. So yes, while I've tried to extract that accent over the years, other people hear little bits and pieces because I get lazy sometimes. And wherever I may happen to be geographically, it's going to creep in. And once in a while, when I get tired, the Boston creeps in a little bit. Yeah,
it happens to me too. I grew up in South Central Pennsylvania, and my girlfriend, when I first said, "Hey, I'm going to take a shower," I get a little lazy. It's like, what's a shower?
Yep.
I said, shower. But if I'm on television or radio, somehow I have lost the accent. The only thing we can't get rid of, it seems like, is the colloquialisms. The way we maybe put a dangling participle at the end of a sentence instead of the beginning, or an extra concept. Like I will always say, "Hey, where you been at?"
Yeah.
Which is a local thing where I grew up. So
I remember my early Toastmasters days, and I'm just me 100% from on stage, off stage, backstage, standing on the street corner or walking down the Captain Crunch aisle in the grocery store. I'm me no matter what. And newbies would say, "But Steve, in the manual it says."
Yeah.
And one day a veteran member stood up in the middle of an evaluation and said, "No, Steven has developed his own style. Steven is a professional. Steven can do that." I looked over.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Wow. We live
exactly
it every day. Yeah.
Steve, that's the funny part. It's, you got to learn the rules. You got to get the chops. And then when you start to develop your own style, and we'll talk about this a little bit, especially when it comes to stand-up comedy, but your own style will only come out when you're truly comfortable both on and off stage. The same person you are off stage becomes the same person you are on stage. And it just is. You're willing to be vulnerable. You're willing to be open, and you're willing to be, sometimes I can be a jerk, and I am a jerk on stage, and I make a joke out of it. That's pretty much who I am on and off stage. So I want to really dig into, because I've listened to a couple of your other interviews, and you reached out to me a few years ago where I was living in Vegas, and you said, man, you got to do the zip line. And we kind of have been like, following each other and trying to get you on the show and everything.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about that moment where you fell down. I know you tell this great story of hitting golf balls, but what happened to really drive you to the bottom? What was it that kicked your ass? That's really what I want to know.
Yeah, it was all self-created. It was the moment in my life where, I'm old enough, I'm going to be 54 this month, to say, Wile E. Coyote strapping on a pair of Acme Rocket roller skates to chase the Roadrunner and just blowing himself to bits. It was all self-created. At the end of my 10th year in the radio industry, I'd worked 15 years worth of hours, working 7 days a week. Basically, I was DJing weddings on the weekend. I was so mentally, physically, emotionally fried that I just pulled the pin and said, I'm done. I'd been the victim of 2 sales and 2 firings over the years. And I heard in the breeze, I heard rumors that the station I was at was going to get sold because the owner was going through divorce. And I said, I'm out of here. I'm done. Yeah. So I quit that without a full-time job to go to and without a plan. My first marriage ended shortly after, which had something to do with that. And any shred of financial stability I had at age 35 was gone. I was $62,000 in debt. And it was all self-created. I can't blame anyone.
Right.
I just wasn't paying attention to what was going on in my life. I was just fried. Blew it all to hell, wound up living at age 35, crawling home and living at my dad's house where my recording studio was. We had just built it and had an office there. So we said, hey, why don't you just come stay here as long as you need to?
Wow.
And it was a safe landing. And I remember August of 2003, in the midst of the frustration, in the ashes, finding $3 in my pocket on a Friday afternoon. And I went and just took out all my frustrations on a bucket of golf balls. Now, being a horrific golfer, I went to the farthest tee box on the property, which was under these big metal power lines.
Oh my goodness.
And a thunderstorm came through and everybody but me ran from the storm. I'm like, well, my life sucks. So I held up the club. I'm barefoot in the wet grass under power lines. Look up. I go, I dare you. Nope. Okay. Went back to hitting my bucket and the buckets of 2 other guys who'd run from the storm. And at the end of an hour, I couldn't even lift my arms. And I'm just getting out frustrated. I wasn't mad at God. I was just like, how much worse can it get? Which is a really bad question to ask. Yeah. But when I got to my car, I opened the door and the sun came out and it stopped raining like that. I looked up and I just started laughing at how funny it was. And a day or so later, I was talking with a brand new life coach. He's got his pen and paper. He goes, so how was your week? I said, put down your pen and listen to this. And I told the story of that hour. I made it as funny as I could. It was pathetic and self-deprecating. And he said, I got 2 questions for you. You ever thought of being a motivational speaker or a stand-up comedian? And are you this open and honest about your life with everybody? Yes, yes, and yes, but I have no idea how to pursue it. 2 weeks later, I was in my first intro to stand-up comedy class. He had a brochure on his desk of all days. And a couple of weeks after that, my first Toastmasters meeting.
Wow.
And here we are.
Talk about listening to the universe. A lot of times and this happens to friends of mine. It happens to me. You lose your temper, you're banging on your car dashboard and you look up and there's this moment where something just shows up and some people follow it and some people go, oh yeah, great. Yeah, there's that, instead of going, wait a minute. It's kind of like improv. You say yes, and you say yes to life, and what's next?
Yeah.
And when you describe that, I call that the Caddyshack moment. Remember when the priest went out and said he had it with God, and he just went out and he goes, he keeps the faith, or no, he had the faith, and he's like, Father, we can't be out here any longer because it's gonna lightning. You're gonna get struck by lightning. And he finally gets a hole in one. He gets struck by lightning, and for the rest of the movie, he hates God.
Yep.
So you had the opposite, where you're just hitting the balls, and it's raining and it's the thunder and lightning. He's like, go ahead, I dare you. Lieutenant Dan, you might want to come back. It's
Well, it's, oh my gosh, it's so perfect you say that, because I used to refer to that as my Lieutenant Dan moment. When in the movie Forrest Gump, in the hurricane, I mean, they're the only boat dumb enough to be out in a hurricane while all the other boats are getting destroyed in the harbor. And he's up in the crow's nest going, come on, is that all you got? Come on. And he exercised all his demons. And I mean, literally on stage, I've referred to that as my Lieutenant Dan moment. Dozens of times. Just got it all out. And all of a sudden, what's left? Well, that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And now it's one of the most requested stories when I'm on stage.
It's funny. I did the Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, and they encourage you to write your morning pages. I call them the angry pages because they wind up being, 9 out of 10 times, just spewing out buckets of mud, as I call it. Yeah. And she says, don't go back and read it, Mm-hmm. But I went back a few times because I as well did stand-up comedy, and I'd read it and I go, hey, that's kind of funny. There's that line between being angry and being funny angry, like Lewis Black. Yeah. I had a very similar story. I had been on Wall Street with my company, and I'm an artist, so I wasn't built really for being an executive and all this. So when I resigned, I stayed on the board, but all my friends had told me for years, man, you should be a stand-up comedian because you do all these impersonations and you do this and you do that, and you're just funny. And I'm like, okay, now you got to put your money where your mouth is, because you say, okay, I'm going to do it. I got to do it at least once in life. So I went to the Learning Annex and I was so scared, Steve, that I took the last class they had 3 months out. I wasn't going to take the one that was a week away. I was freaking out. And I'm a funny guy. I've been on radio as well, and I've done these things. But I got to tell you, I was petrified. Yeah. I get to the class, and the people sitting there, I didn't know anybody. And this woman sits behind me, I start doing my thing, and I get up, and I think I did 45 impersonations in 5 minutes, where if you just made that face. Most people who are in comedy, they know what I just did. And that was like, I threw up everything, and I was so scared. I wouldn't even let them laugh, But it led me to an 8-year career as a professional stand-up comedian. Nice. I used to open for Lisa Lampanelli, and I opened for a week with Tom Rhodes down at the Baltimore Comedy Factory. Nice. I've had some amazing experiences. But the best experiences, the girl who sat behind me at that Learning Annex class was Kareth Foster, who writes and has been in Ebony Magazine and has been on television and Comedy Central. We're good friends, so I can call her anytime I want. And people ask me all the time, they go, how come you get so many famous people on your show so easily? And I said, because I knew them before they were famous. And there you go. I treated them well from day one. And I think you have a very similar story. The stand-up comedy, and you and I have this in common. I love this. This made us better speakers, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And I had the double threat, I guess, of going to Toastmasters at the same time. I mean, my speaking in comedy literally was launched out of that afternoon at the driving range. Wow. So I had them both. So as I learned the tools of storytelling and structure and timing and face and voice and physicality, I was taking all the funny material I'd written over the years and breathing life into it and doing it properly.
Wow.
And people even now, Steve, tell me a joke. I don't tell jokes. You're a comedian. I didn't tell jokes when I was a comedian. I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
And that's where we go. And working together for those 7 years, each was the greatest compliment to the other. And people asked, why'd you stop doing stand-up comedy? I said, somebody came up to me one day with a very valid question. Hey, Steve, if the female CEO of one of the companies that hires you to come in for vision boards or a motivational keynote speech went to a comedy club and heard your closing bit, which was the Viagra song, it was a song parody to Queen's We Will Rock You, do you think that would hurt your speaking career? Now, you were making no money at the club, but you make several $1,000s for a keynote. You think maybe that might put some people off and take you off the professional, vision? I said, you know what? You're right. And I stopped. doing stand-up. I had a dozen videos of stand-up comedy clips on YouTube, took them all down, a combined 74,500 views on YouTube, deleted every single one. The Viagra song had 34,500 views, deleted the whole thing, took all my comedy notebooks, took all the clean material and the idea behind it, and made my speaking even better.
Wow. Wow, that took guts. Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? He took high clicks, high viewership, and dumped it because it would hurt his corporate speaking career. How many of you have the guts to do that? We as creative people, sometimes we're riding that line between 5 different professions, between writing and, comedy, and maybe we're doing some videos, or maybe we're doing this or that. And will it hurt what you're doing? You have to really step back for a moment and really assess that. I really admire that you did that. That took courage and guts, because it's basically, at the end of the day, where do you want to get paid?
Yeah, it was the best decision. Every once in a while, I'll go back and look at those clips and say, for the time, for where I was, they're pretty good. I never made a ton of money as a comedian. I was a middle act at best, mostly an opener. But I had a ball. I met some amazing people, some of whom are still dear friends today, because just like you said, you treat people with respect, no matter where you're at. I mean, I had one of the legends of Boston comedy walk into a club one day and go, hey, can I go up? In the club, the host looks at me. He goes, you mind if he goes up first? I go, hell no. He's going to hand me the most amazing audience. I mean, he handed me an audience that was like 90% there. And I just walked on and rode the wave. And he let me do that because I was always the easiest to work with, the most respectful of the time, the stage, the mic, the audience, the other comics. And I tried to bring that into speaking as well. And I'm not a rah, buy my stuff guy. I'm just, like I said, same guy on stage, off stage, backstage, and in the Captain Crunch aisle, where I've had amazing conversations.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Happy to come, happy to go. I'll be courteous, whatever you want. I'm willing to work with you. When I do the tech rehearsal, I introduce myself to the stage manager right away, the director, whoever's running things. I say hi to the camera crew. I warn them, I don't stand still and I don't stay on stage. Please try to follow me. I might be a little erratic, and then I'll make a joke out of it. Where's he going to be now? And it, they love and respect you for that. I mean, they really, really do. Yeah. Sometimes I'll bring them a coffee or something, just be courteous, be polite. How hard is it? Yeah. I've met keynote speakers who were nasty to the meeting planner. How do you do that? Yeah. Because they're famous, or they treat somebody horribly. And then I'm like looking at them going, and you probably wonder why your video got screwed up when it got sent to you, and they just don't make the connection. That's been the exciting part, is meeting our heroes and hopefully not getting disappointed.
Yeah. We are, you nailed it when you said how similar we are, because when you said that, it made me think of a keynote speech I delivered out in Arizona, May of 2017. It was for the Brain Injury Alliance of Arizona. Oh, wow. So there was 500 people, half of whom were traumatic brain injury survivors. The other half were their caregivers. And I was up there, and it was a very high ceilinged room. Right. I couldn't really hear myself very well on the speakers. And I finally looked out. Some people were kind of looking around, and I said, is my sound cutting out? In my periphery at the right front of the stage was the AV guy lip syncing the words, I gave you the wrong microphone. And so I said, all right, how am I going to handle this? So I said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to put you on hold for 60 seconds. Feel free to hum either Muskrat Love or Rocket Man to yourself, and we'll be right back. Went over, swapped mics, came back, did it. And at the end of the event, he came over and he says, man, thank you so much. I said, for what? He said, I've gotten screamed at before when little smaller mistakes than that happen. And I said, are you serious? He goes, yeah, by some pretty big names. Yeah, man, my job is, this is your house, your rules. You tell me how to respect and get the best out. We're going to be great. And I've literally sent thank you videos to the general managers of hotels, praising their AV staff, their event coordinators, their planners, their wait staff, everything. And to the point where one guy was scheduled to be laid off and he didn't, because the GM said, because of the video you sent, we realized how important this person is. We were going to cut costs.
Wow.
And the guy gave me a hug. The next time I showed up for an event, the AV guy came over. He says, I owe you a hug. Can I give you a hug?
Are you manly enough to take a hug from me?
Hey, I'm a hugger, man. I don't care who it is. Just don't pick me up and throw me around like a rag doll, because that means you're huge. I'm 6'2".
I'm 5'8", and I took jujitsu, and we used to have this joke: if you don't make eye contact, it's okay. Yeah, we had a joke.
If you don't hear music start playing.
Yeah. There's, it's a very simple rule in life. You give what you get what you give.
Yeah.
And I remember Jesse Elder. He used to be a big jujitsu guy, and now he's motivational person and business coach. And he told this on video. He went to the airport, and this person went so far out of their way to help him get the rent-a-car and all this other stuff. He called and got, I don't know how he did it, but he got almost to the top, like almost to the CEO. And he goes, I demand to talk to this person, blah, blah, blah. I need to talk about, this woman, blah, blah, blah. He was very upset. And then when he gets on the phone, he goes, she was phenomenal. And it was just like, whoa, just those little things in life. You never know who's going through something. Be kind. I can come across like an angry dude. I'm angry because I'm upset. And being upset means you have a heart. You care. There's so many people who go through life who don't care. Yeah. And you have to care. I love what you're doing, man. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. It's a blast doing this. And yeah. I mean, sometimes if I'm with my wife, we may be traveling. You know how frustrating traveling can be. Flights get canceled, weather, all this and that. Well, we're supposed to be going to Nashville, and we got as far as Charlotte. And all of a sudden, my wife's got this radar because she used to travel so much. Yeah. She looks at me and she goes, grab your stuff. So we're running down the hallway. I got my laptop, my carry-on bag. The cords are dangling behind me as I'm running. She says, we have to get in the line because the flight to Nashville just got canceled because the thunderstorms in Nashville are going to be going all night. She goes, let's just turn around and go back home. So we finally get to the counter. They're already exhausted from the first 14 people screaming at them. And we just make them laugh. And they give us tickets. My wife says, we're not sitting together. I said, no problem. And then we got to the next counter and she goes, hey, Mr. Funny Motivational Guy, why don't you go see if you can get our tickets together? So I went up, I had my little carry-on. I put it on the counter. I said, my wife and I have been together for about 11 years at this point. I said, for some reason, she still really digs me. There may or may not be a bottle of rum in this bag. And I pushed it towards them. I said, but if we could sit next to each other, I think she'd really appreciate it. And they go tip, 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 tip. And they sent the tickets. They go, you're all set, sir. And she pushes the bag. She goes, we can't take the rum though. And I said, that's okay. There's no rum in there actually. But they thought that was the funniest thing. And I was up there being me. And what I say to everyone I deal with, I hope I'm the meanest, nastiest pain in your butt all day long.
Wow.
And that is so disarming to people. It makes me feel good because they can't. We're entrepreneurs, right? We're in charge of our own thing. We can say what we want to people. If they tick us off, they can't. They have to sit there and take it. And I always try to lob that little love grenade over the counter to them and just let them know if someone's a jerk later, I want you to remember that weird guy that made you laugh. That's how I want you to remember this day.
That's a fantastic way to look at life. And I'm going to ask you if this has ever happened to you. Mm-hmm. Being funny for me, I mean, it's part of my personality now, but it was a survival tool as a kid. It very much was so. To keep from getting beat up, my dad and mom were kind of angry, dysfunctional. So I could read the room. I had to read a room at 6. Okay. So you learn to be funny. As I healed my traumas and I got through life, I started to realize the funny part was part of my toolkit. It was just a wonderful, wonderful part of my toolkit. And I don't think twice about it. I'll crack a joke, I'll be at work and I'll be in my studio and I'll just say something to my girlfriend or I'll be doing whatever. And this happened to me one Christmas Eve in New York City. I was really working very late for a client and it was probably a day or two before Christmas, and it's snowing. It's gross outside. You know how New York can get. And we had a Kinko's across the street from my studio. So I go across the street. I'm waiting for this woman behind the counter to print out some colored, printouts and sheets, posters. And so I'm cracking jokes while I'm there. I'm like, oh man, blah, blah, blah. And then I know the lines to A Christmas Carol at the end. Is it you there, boy? What day is it? Is it Christmas Day? They're cracking up. They're laughing. And this one girl had been standing next to me. She walked up to me, and as I'm about to leave, and she goes, I was really, really depressed, and I want to thank you for making me laugh. Your gift of laughter lifted me up. And I just almost cried because I was like standing there going, we don't know how we impact people. I'm sure you have a few stories like that.
Yeah. And total goosebumps when you just said that, because it took me to a few places where over the years, I remember once at a comedy club, and I wasn't even on the bill that night. I was just going to watch my friends and hang out because I had nothing else to do. And I went to the show, and the guy who worked the door knew me because I'd played there many times. He says, hey man, Greg, the opening comedian, he hasn't shown up yet and we can't reach him on his cell phone. Can you go up and do like 8-10 minutes? And I said, well, yeah. And I ran out to my car and I got a couple of little props that I used to use. Oh no, it did 8 minutes. Now it was my hometown crowd. So they were great. They kind of knew me and made them laugh. And then the other guy came, and I just sat there and watched the rest of the show. And something I always did when the show was over, I would walk table to table and thank people for coming, or I'd stand near the door and thank them.
That's great. Yeah.
And these two women came over to me and they said, hey, we really enjoyed your set, but we got to tell you something. And they pointed across the room to this woman getting her coat. They said, see that lady over there? She's a friend of ours, and her husband passed away about 6 months ago. This was the first time she's come out with us since then. And you made her laugh.
Wow.
Thank you.
Now I have goosebumps.
Wow. I wasn't even we know I was supposed to be universally.
Yeah.
I wasn't scheduled to be on the show. My name was not on the wall. I used to have a bit where I drew a stick figure on a napkin. And whenever I wasn't part of the show, I'd say, look, opening act on the sign, headliner act, picture on the wall. Me, nothing. So I drew one, and I would stick the napkin with the stick figure on the wall behind me. And if I forgot it, it wound up there for the whole damn show.
That's hysterical.
The headliner's up there, and people are pointing to me. Hey, your napkin's still up there. I'm like, no, I forgot.
Steve Gamlin, famous. Say that guy. Well,
their friend, that woman, and I got out to my car that night, and I was almost in tears.
Yeah,
I just looked up and said, "Yeah, I was supposed to be here tonight. Thank you for that."
There are moments like that in life.
Yep.
The gift of laughter, my friend. And the older I get, the more I realize my parents did not prepare me for life. Because you're in this balance between surviving, especially these days, and finding joy in life. Serenity now. I'm thinking of that Seinfeld episode.
Yeah,
where he's really angry. Serenity now. You finally lose it. But it's when you're a motivational speaker, which you are, you really, really work hard at crafting the story from your own personal life. And I don't know if you did this, but I wound up, when I first started doing comedy, I wound up buying a whole bunch of those little tiny notepads by the stack, because I wasn't a natural writer. I was the kind of comedian, I was funny in the moment. If we're out for a couple of beers and we're doing this or doing that, I would crack a joke and everybody would be hysterical. And I couldn't remember for the life of me what I said the next day.
Yep.
Not that I had been drinking. I don't drink that much, but it was just along the lines of I was in the moment. So comedy got me into the discipline of not only writing down my bits and working on punching it up and making it funnier, but it made me a better writer. Did you find that to be the case where you had to find that discipline in the writing process and look for the stories and the comedy in your life, everything that was happening.
Yeah, I did the full-on regular size notebooks, like right out of school, the big spiral bounds. I had several of those. And I started off with a micro cassette recorder, but then I graduated to a couple of the digital recorders from Radio Shack. Now I'm dating myself.
You're dating yourself.
I'm way dating myself. But I used to, as I was driving around or even talking or whatever, I always had one of these things with me so that as I was observing and doing those in the moment reactionary things, I was capturing them. And what I would do is listen back and transcribe, take the best of, write them out, flesh them out. And I would write them, but then I wouldn't sit there and read them. I would actually get up and walk around. So I would get the emotion, the voice, the tone, the physicality, the pauses, the timing down. As I was writing them, I would do that. And I've had 3 challenges or people that challenged me with something over the past 11 years now that radically changed everything. One person challenged me to a 30-day YouTube video challenge. He would supply a question. He'd say, you answer that question in one take and you upload it. No editing, nothing. You've got to just be on. And I had never been brave enough to do a video in one shot. I did 24 takes. They all sucked. And he sent me a message at like 8:00 that night. Hey, I looked at your YouTube channel. Your video's not there. And I'm just giving him the finger from my recording studio. Did the next one in one take, said up yours, uploaded it and said, screw you. And then tomorrow I'll do number 2. 2 days later, I got an email or direct message from somebody. Steve, you don't know me, but I saw your video as part of Chris's challenge. Gosh, how did you know I needed that message the other day? Thank you so much. And then that's the day I said, okay, I can just be me and be present. And then in May of 2019, I got a 30-day writing challenge. Write something, post it on social media every day for the entire month of May. That's 31 days. It can be 2 lines. It can be 200 words, whatever you want, but you got to do something every day. But I kept running out of time every day. So I started to live write. I would say something as I would say it and write exactly what I said instead of trying to craft these poetic things.
Right.
And it just came out that way. And that radically changed my writing. And then in July of that year, somebody said, hey, Steve, I challenge you 30 days of Facebook Live. I'd never done one because I didn't have enough confidence to say, well, what if I screw up?
Right.
And I started doing them. And in January 29th of 2019, in my driveway, walking up from the curb after bringing the trash cans out in the middle of a blizzard, I happened to think of a cluster of homeless veterans 2 towns away, freezing to death by a river. And I tapped my back pocket and I said, my phone's there. I said, screw it, I'm going live. Waved my arm. The light came on. I'm looking like a drowned rat in a blizzard in my driveway, snot running down my face. Did a 4-minute Facebook Live about how you can just reach out in your community to see what you can do to help people who are in need. And I had so much slush on the phone. When I finished it, I hit the button that I thought was end. It was delete. I deleted the whole damn thing. Walked into my recording studio, wiped the slush off the phone and went, uh-oh, it's gone. Went back out in the blizzard, did it again, got super emotional again, looked even worse. And in 11 days, it had 9,000 views.
That's incredible. Wow.
So now I let it fly no matter where I'm at. And it's funny because I don't care about the number of views. It was the reactions I got. Hey, man, I saw you. You looked like crap. But you know what? I brought some socks to a homeless shelter the next day. So we got that. Yeah, and I just said, man, I look like crap, but impact. The message got heard. People took action. So that's where it's at.
Man, I hope everybody's listening and taking notes, especially the people who, I'm going to be an influencer. Stop worrying about being a...
Oh, God, I hate that word.
I'm trying not to swear as much. But
I'm a thought leader.
I'm a thought leader.
Really?
Someone called me a thought leader. I almost punched him once. I said, all I try to do is bring you stuff no one else is bringing.
Yeah.
But wow. I love what you're doing. I'm telling you, man. It's and if you are helping anybody who's homeless and getting involved, the number one thing is gloves, socks, and underwear and hats. And they aren't that much to buy. You can find them in the POP aisles, the pop-up aisles. You can just grab them, and they always have them on sale. $5 here, $5 there. it's phenomenal. Just give. And that was your message. It was just like, hey, we live sometimes in a very cozy, environment, and we forget, someone across the street, they got a brother, they don't know where he's at. He's sleeping on a bench somewhere. They know it. They can't find him. And that's how it is. Yeah. So
it's heartbreaking. And I went viral with something I wrote as well. If you remember January 2016, when Powerball hit $1 billion,
right?
Nobody won. Well, when it was at 900 million, I saw these people on the news, the news reporter goes out and she's like 18 years old. And she's like, what are you going to do if you win? I'm going to help the homeless. Like 5 people in a row said that. And I'm like, you're all full of crap. You're bribing God for lottery numbers. And then this one guy looks right in the camera and he goes, hookers and cocaine.
And then she got flustered. I remember that.
Oh, she got flustered. And she goes, sir, we're live. And he goes, hookers and cocaine. And she's like, back to you.
Yeah, she didn't know how to handle it. She's 18.
Pissed. Yeah, I got pissed off. Not at him. He was the only honest one in the room. I get pissed at all the other people who were saying, if I win $900 million, I help the homeless. And I threw together this graphic. My wife was waiting for me at the time. We're supposed to go shopping together. I said, hang on a second. I got a rant. And I created a graphic with a hand just coming out. I said, for those who think it takes $900 million to help the homeless, guess what? For $1.79, you can buy a loaf of bread, tuna fish for 85 cents a can. Granola bars are cheap. A warm pair of gloves could save a life. And you already own a coat you don't wear.
Right.
So knock it off. And I posted that. And the next day it had like 1,000 likes and 50 shares. I'm like, oh my God, I went viral. 11 days later, it had 4.1 million views and 53,500 shares.
It's the message, man. I swear to God. That's why I wanted you on the show. You have a good heart. I had a friend, I can't call him a friend, but in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And I swear to God, con men go there to hide because they blend in. Mm-hmm. But when we first started hanging out, he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, and he would buy veterans a meal and all this. And I started to realize he was doing this to gain attention because he'd be around a friend who was in the military, or he'd want me to take a video or take a picture of him helping the homeless. And there's like 100 pictures of him on his Facebook page, basically him helping the homeless. And I didn't realize it at the time, but he was trying to hide his true nature. And no one believes he's a con man because he helps the homeless. Yeah. And if you feel you have to have a camera while you're helping the homeless, knock it off. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been down on my luck in life. And when somebody comes up and they're going, here's something special, it actually insults you. It makes you upset. You're mad because we want to be empowered, especially as men. Yeah. We want to, stand strong. We try to be alpha males, even if we're not. We just want to be a functioning beta male. How's that? Or what do they call it? A sigma male? That's the new cool, the hip or cooler version of that.
I've never tried to be hip or cool at anything. I'm just me. And it's funny you say that because it's very true. And I learned it the hard way. I was behind someone in line at a grocery store, and you could just tell by the way this person was dressed that they were kind of on hard times. And I just, arrogantly said, oh, hey, I'm going to pay for that for you. And I watched every ounce of pride drain from that person's face. And I just, in my head, I said, you are the biggest a-hole on the planet right now, because she just turned and said, no, I'm all set. And I knew I'd insulted her, and anything I said further to even apologize would have just made it worse.
Yeah.
And I devised a way to go about it. Now, when I see somebody, if I want to help them out, I'll just look at them and say, would you do me a huge favor? And they'll look at me like, kind of what? I said, look, my family and we have a nonprofit called Beach Bum Philanthropy. We each have to do an act of kindness every day. It's whatever time it is. I haven't done one yet, and I'm busy the rest of the day. Whoever doesn't do an act of kindness has to wash dishes after dinner, and I hate washing dishes. So would you let me pay for that for you?
Oh, that's a better way.
So disarming. And I met a gentleman one night in his 60s, just a little fire plug of a guy, and he had 2 items. It was $2.97. And I held out my hand and I said, have a great night. And he shook my hand and he just looked at me, had tears in his eyes. He said, my wife passed away 3 weeks ago, and she always did the shopping, and I'm just feeling really lost here.
Wow.
And I thought
Wow.
he had come to my line when I looked up, and when I looked back, he was gone. And then I said, well, okay, next time, I guess. And then he was back. And all I could think of was his wife nudging him. Hey, honey, go over here because this gentleman wants to have a moment. And I walked out to my car and I was almost bawling. Now, I was an hour late for dinner that night because I promised my wife I'd be home by 6. And at 5 minutes to 7, I walked into that store and I walked into the kitchen and she goes, and I said, wait till you hear the story that I had to be late so I could tell. She's like, you're in your freaking law of attraction. You know, she's like, okay. She goes, you get a pass on this one. And
One time.
It's one of my favorite stories to relive. And I get emotional on stage telling that one. I just really do.
Well, you touch my heart. Yeah, you know, the way you live your life is a testament to, I think, how everybody should live their life. Don't wait until you get rich to give. Just give. Yeah. Don't wait to give love. Give love. That's the way it goes. Wow. Powerful testament to the work you do, my friend. And I think when you declare that this is the kind of work you want to do, you want to be a motivational speaker, you want to touch people's lives, the universe responds by sending you this tidal wave of people who need what you're giving.
Yeah.
You know, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. It's been amazing because, of course, early on, you know, I want to be a motivational speaker. Oh, you're going to be like Tony Robbins. And that's not to say I didn't do a little bit of the rah, rah, rah stuff when I first started. And then I started to mock those speakers on stage. I would yell things that rhymed. And the third line I'd say was always, if your life is rough, and I'd grab all my books. I'd go, buy my stuff. And they would laugh and it would disarm and then we'd be okay. Yeah. And people say, so do you hate Tony Robbins? No, I'll follow Tony on stage. But as I come out, hey, strobe light guy, knock it off. Laser guy, shut it off. Fog machine, get rid of it. Music, done. All lights up. I'm going to sit on the front of the stage and dangle my feet and ask 10,000 people if they mind if I share why I became a speaker.
Ah, damn, that's powerful.
That's it.
Dude.
That's it.
Wow.
It's because I had a friend believe in me at a time in my life when I didn't. Encouraged me to get my first radio job at age 24. And I went and broadcast school, got an internship. 3 weeks later, that friend died. And after 10 years of radio, and when I became a speaker, I said, you know what? I want to do for other people what that friend did for me. I want to get people to see a better version of themselves and believe in themselves enough to take the first step. That's my why. Wow. And it's been that way since 2005, when a friend of mine said, why do you want to be a speaker? I said, I want to help people. And he said, why? I said, because people need help. He says, why? 17 whys later, I got tears coming down my face and I remembered my friend. I said it and he goes, don't you ever freaking forget that. And I haven't.
That's the slap in the face to make you go, here's your why. It isn't this outer stuff.
Yeah, it's not standing ovations either.
Not at all.
You and I both know people that part of their marketing is he's gotten more than 500 standing ovations. I've gotten one. And you know what I did? I cheated to get it. I bet a friend of mine who was in the front row, I said, bet you $5 I get a standing ovation tonight. She's like, these people don't even know you. So it was a speech called Some Days Your Phoenix Rides a Pogo Stick, meaning you don't just rise out of the ashes on the first try. Right. You fall back and your tail feathers burn off. But here's the thing. If you got the balls to go out there and try something and fail, you burn your tail feathers off. Every time they grow back, they're stronger and the colors are more vivid. So just before I wrapped up, I said, ladies and gentlemen, would you all please stand up? Would you look over your right shoulder? Would you look over your left shoulder? Look down at your butt. How your tail feathers doing? My name is Steve Gamlin. Thank you all so much tonight. I hope you have an incredible evening. And they start clapping while they're standing.
Yes.
There's my friend in the front row giving me the finger. Everyone else is applauding and she's still sitting giving me the finger. It's my one standing ovation because I don't care. I don't hang my hat on glorification.
I remember the first time I got a standing ovation and I went home and I sat there and I go, how did that happen? And I analyzed it. I wasn't just sitting there guessing. I said, okay, I would love more of those, but not from ego. It means I reached them. How do I do that? And so, I think I may have had 3 in my life. I'm like you. I don't care. I want to know how did I reach that person? How did I get to them? I tell a lot of stories about my Hungarian father who, he didn't care about my feelings or have me wear a helmet. He was from the silent generation. And I remember I was giving an hour and a half keynote in front of oil and gas, company guys from started out as riggers, putting up the rigs, all the way up to the executive suite. And this one big executive who had clearly been in the industry like 40, 45 years, he starts crying in the front row. And I go up to him, I go, Dave, what's going on? Why are you crying? And he leans into the mic. He goes, I love the stories of you and your father. Because I tell these stories where my dad's nasty, but then he gives me the lesson. I'm your father. I'm not your friend. Kind of stories make a memory. And I was just like, holy crap, I can reach this guy. Wow. And and let's get into this because I wanted to talk about this. This is really about finding your style. And we were talking about this style kind of thing because I can make it funny, but I always bring in the lesson at the end. Like, my dad died, gasping for air, because he smoked a pipe his whole life. And so these little stories along the way that are funny as hell, you finally get to the end. My dad's in this hospital bed, and I decided for some stupid reason to take jujitsu at 45 years of age. And one day after a belt test, I rushed to the hospital to see him. And I happened to have my belt that I just earned with me. And I gave it to him to hold. And he sat there for an hour and a half, Steve, holding and cherishing my belt and asking me questions. What was it like? What was this like? And my dad's a tough Hungarian, and he goes, I'm adopted through him. I mean, my mom was there, but my dad, I have his last name. I'm not Hungarian. So, but he looked at me and he said, I guess the Hungarian side wore off on you. You like a good fight, and and all this. And I'd never seen my father light up like that over something I did. Yeah. And I thought there are these moments in life and these stories, and I want you to talk about this. You begin to develop your own style, and it takes a few years. Am I correct? Or were you somebody who was right out of the gate? How'd that happen?
It's still a work in progress now, but it's funny because so many people in our industry, in the speaking world, fall back on these stories, these things that are legendary, like the starfish story, which I'm glad nothing just came out your nose when I said that, because a lot of speakers, that does happen.
I have a plaque from a speaking gig. They gave me that story. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Or they read it in Reader's Digest, or they get up on stage and they say, Michael Jordan was cut from his sophomore basketball team, but he had a coach who believed in him. And I sit there and I just think, really? Where are you in all of this? What has life taught you? Don't regurgitate and vomit all these old motivational rah-rah things. Tell me what you've gone through, because your audience can relate to you. I can't relate to Michael Jordan or somebody who's climbed Mount Everest. I tell stories of things that have happened to me because the people in my audiences have the same exact pains and fears and challenges and stories where maybe my outcome was a bit better than theirs was the first time. Maybe they haven't tried something in a long time. So if I share the reality of what I've gone through and things I've seen and conversations I've had, really legitimately me. Now, of course, some of them have, funny lines and endings added.
Yeah.
But it's real. And the best part is somebody can come up to me even years later. The record is 3 years. And the reason I said the Captain Crunch aisle, about 6 years ago, I stopped at a grocery store in between meetings for something. Now, I wasn't planning to go there. It was convenient. I drove past, it was there. Walking down the Captain Crunch aisle, and some guy walks past me, turns around and goes, hey man, you're that speaker, right? And I turn around, we're the only two in the aisle. I said, yes, sir, I'm a speaker. What story do you remember? He said, the monster truck couple. It was a picture I had of a stadium of stands. Up above were empty seats, which represented people who don't show up in your life no matter what. Down in the corner, there were two gentlemen who looked bored as hell to be there. I said, these are people who are around you, but maybe what's going on right now isn't the reason they're there, so they're not excited. But there was a man and a woman in the middle who were like this. Yeah. I said, they are at a monster truck rally.
Yeah.
So wherever you are, You make sure your energy plugs into the other people who are most excited that you are there. He had a job interview a week later. I was speaking in front of 85 unemployed people, some who were chronically unemployed for years. He went into that job interview a week later and nailed it because he found the monster truck person among the panel who was interviewing him. And his
That's
energy
brilliant.
lifted up. And he said, man, I said, how long ago was that? He said, 3 years. I said, wow, I'm honored and amazed that you walked past me and recognized me. He said, hell, I didn't think I'd ever get a chance to thank you, but that was awesome.
The universe, baby.
I do. Yep. That's
the
it.
Universe.
That's it. Some days it yells, some days it whispers. And you know when it whispers, it means it's a secret just for you. So be listening no matter what. Always.
Yeah. Sometimes winning the lottery is just for you.
Mm-hmm.
As they say. You know, when I did comedy, I did the same rookie mistake everybody does. I would sit down with writing partners and groups and I'd say, let me think of something funny to write. And this happens over 3-4 years. Then my 4th into 5th year of comedy, I had a friend who just sat me down, Rodney Laney. He's been in a few movies and TV. He goes, Brad, you know what you should do? I go, what? Because I was frustrated. He goes, all that weird stuff you talk about. He goes, just do that. And I think that week I had 3 bits I wrote. And to this day, all my comedy friends, Johnny Watson, all these guys, they call me up and they go, that bit is genius. I wish I had thought of that.
Yes.
And it was the beginning, Steve, and you know this, of me stopping, trying to be funny, and instead talking about something that is passionate to me, and I happen to make it funny because I'm upset by it. Yeah. Like I used to be upset that people were on the internet all weekend and HBO and binge watching. The tsetse fly doesn't do that. They don't have time. They got 48 hours to live. Right? Yeah. There's no, hey, let's go out on a date and see if we like each other.
Yeah.
And so, the weird, if you're weird, be weird. If you're whatever, be whatever. Yeah. When did you feel you were like in that zone where you were just being purely authentic? When was that?
I can tell you the exact moment when it happened. I was speaking in front of one of the New Hampshire chapters of SHRM, the human resource people. It was not a deep room, but it was a very wide room.
Oh, wow.
And it was back, I use slides and stuff, a lot of pictures, not a lot of words. And I got to a point in my presentation and I just forgot what I was supposed to say next, because it was a fairly new presentation. And I kind of looked over my shoulder. I'm like, well, that slide is no help. So I looked at the audience from this end. I made eye contact all the way across and all the way back, and still could not remember what the hell I was supposed to say next. So in my brain, now I was doing stand-up at the time, I grabbed a chair, I spun it backwards and sat on it with my arms up on the back of the chair. In that, let's have a private conversation. I leaned in. I said, do you all mind if I take a moment and explain why I became a speaker? And they thought it was part of the gig. And they go, yeah. And I told the story of my friend who believed in me, who passed away 3 weeks after he got to say, I told you so, for me following my dream. And I looked up and there's people crying, also the night I learned, don't leave people sad. And then I hit my next slide and then I go, oh, now I remember what I was supposed to say next. And I did the rest of the presentation. People came up to me after that night. Steve, when you talked about your friend, oh my gosh, wow.
Chills.
I felt you. I felt who you really are. And from that day on, I stopped trying to be funny like anyone else. And I had to modify that story because somebody told me, you're an a-hole. You made me cry. Someone told me, a coach said, don't ever leave audiences sad. So I called my sister and I said, hey, you got a picture of me and Danny? She said, yeah, it was like 6 months before he died. So it was the last healthy picture of the two of us. It's good. Send it to me. I'd put that up on screen and say, I miss 3 things about this picture. Obviously, I miss my friend. I miss how simple life was in 1992 when I was 24 years old. But I think what I miss the most, and I look at the picture and I look back, is the ability to wear horizontally striped clothing and still be considered attractive. They laugh. We're back. And that is now one of the most requested stories at events from people who've seen me before. If I leave it out, maybe there wasn't time or they wanted something different. They'll raise their hand at the end during Q&A. Hey, what about that story of you and your friend? I brought my friend here to hear that. And I'll look at the event planner. Can you give me 5 more minutes? Yeah. Okay. Put it up on screen and tell that whole story. And it's 100% uniquely. I don't have to try to remember it. I don't have to memorize. I don't have to be poignant.
Yeah.
I just go. And when you can do that in written word and speaking uniquely yourself, look out.
Dude, you said a mouthful. And I think it's why I hear speakers talk about the imposter syndrome. I've never, ever suffered from that. And it's because I don't make up stuff. I don't tell tall tales. I don't. And I think you're probably the same way. You just tell stories from the heart that actually happened to you.
Yeah.
And thank you for telling me don't leave audiences sad. I have yet to learn that.
Yep. Yep. Well, I learned it the hard way. Somebody legitimately called me. I mean, it was somebody who knew me, so they could get away with saying that. But like, you a-hole, you made me cry and wrecked my makeup. Like, yeah, I'm so sorry. But I've been called out over the years because occasionally I've exaggerated the stories a little too much.
Right.
And somebody came up at the end and goes, "There's no way that really happened like that." And I said, "Yeah, I kind of over exaggerated that one a little bit." Yeah. And it happened a couple of times. And I said, all right, rein it in, bring it back.
Yeah.
Now, when I say something, I'll just cap it.
Right.
Where, yes, it really happened. Yes, it's believable. Yes, it's really weird and memorable, but here's how it happened.
Right. I like that. I love that about you. Hey, how do we get a hold of you? Anybody wants to hire Steve as your coach or have him speak at your event? How do we get a hold of you?
Nice and easy. Everything I've got is available at motivationalfirewood.com, which is my brand. I actually own the trademark on it.
Fantastic. Awesome. We're now going to go into the lightning round, Steve-O. Are you ready?
Fire away. Always. Sometimes these are my favorite parts of conversations.
Yeah, because I like when my guests, the audience gets to hear something that you're passionate about, like Panache Desai. Turns out he's a huge Harry Potter fan, like big.
Yeah.
And Brian Smith, who founded Uggs, rugby. That's his huge passion.
Wow.
It's so we find out about our guests a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the first question. Is there anything that still pisses you off?
Rude people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We have a choice to react and respond any way we want. Some people make really crappy choices.
Yeah. That's tough. Is there something about you that we don't know yet about you?
I can walk on water.
Wow.
If the boat is going fast enough. I know how to barefoot water ski, and I have a picture to prove it.
That's amazing. I had friends who took me out water skiing in the Long Island Sound, the South Shore. Yep. And they brought a camera and video and everything. And we're talking back in the late 80s, early 90s. And they're thinking, oh, this is going to be so good. Brad's going down. We're going to get him. I actually got up first time, skied beautifully. The only thing that knocked me into the water was a wake. And that was it. They were like, we're so disappointed, and then they jumped out and we got clams. You can just stand in the water and get them with your feet. Mm-hmm. Went back to my house and had some linguine with clam sauce. A great memory, great day. Wow. But wow.
Nice.
My last question is, do you have a favorite memory? And I know that's going to be hard because your stories are all these great memories, but what is your best favorite memory?
June 16th, 2007, 10 days after I wrote in my journal, I am ready to fall in love, because I was 3.5 years out of my divorce. I'd really worked on myself. And, I do the visualization, vision boards. I had envisioned my dream relationship. 10 days later, June 16th, I get an email that I almost deleted as spam. And the next day I opened it, realized it was from a girl named Tina I'd gone to high school with. Hadn't spoken to or seen in 21 years, had a crush on her in high school, but never had the guts to ask her out. She reached out to me. This June will be our 15th anniversary. from over 1,000 miles away at that point.
God bless. That is awesome. That is fantastic.
And I always tell her, if you ever end our relationship, just know you are going to demolish my speaking career, because that's everyone's favorite story. Got me on Oprah's radio network 4 times.
Wow. That's great. I love that.
Yep.
Well, Steve, we finally did it, man. I want to thank you for being on Awakened Nation. Is there any closing arguments that you want to throw out to the audience?
A bit of encouragement. And this is something I was so blessed to have my grandfather in my life for about 40 years. Leave as many situations a day better than you find them, even with just a simple word or a gesture or act of kindness. Hold the door, pay someone a compliment, high five somebody, say thank you a lot. Just leave as many situations as you can better than you find them. You'll find that you probably get the most reward out of it.
Wow. Steve Gamlin, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being on Awakened Nation, my friend.
My pleasure. This was a joy. And I know you've apologized a few times, like when we tried to get together. There are reasons, so many, that today was the perfect day. So thank you for your patience and your efforts in getting me back here together. This was phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. All right, everybody, tune in next week. Don't forget to reach out to Steve. Please reach out to Steve Gamlin. He's got YouTube videos. He's got motivational talks, speeches, everything. He's the guy, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it. The zip line. You got to do the zip line, man.
Yep.
But reach out to him. Always positive, always has a great story. Tune in next week, my friends, where we have another great guest here on Awakened Nation. Take care. Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.